Hey everybody, in this installment of Sci-Fi Review, I'm going to be talking about the movie Tau, just like the Greek letter. Stay tuned. So just a quick reminder, if you like what you see, be sure and hit that like button, subscribe, turn on your notifications so you see all the awesome sci-fi stuff I'm going to be looking at in the next several days, weeks, months, years. Make sure you do that. Get notified whenever I post something. Tau is a tight-knit little movie that I found on Netflix the other day, and I was like, okay, this looks interesting. I had never seen it before. It was apparently 2018, so it's been there a while. If I hadn't seen it, it just completely went under my radar. I was like, oh, that looks kind of interesting. So started watching this, and I almost gave up on it, and I'm glad I didn't. So let me run down the story here without spoiling anything for you. The movie starts with this girl named Julia, played by Micah Monroe. She gets kidnapped by a scientist researcher type named Alex, played by Ed Skrein, who takes her back to his nefarious laboratory, throws her in a cell there's two other subjects there. They're kind of not important. We'll find in a second. This mysterious thing, they put implants in the back of their skull that are all tied into their brain. This project, experiment, whatever you want to call it, they're like exposing these people to things and then downloading what is happening in their brains into, and I'm assuming, Tau. Now there's details I think that either I blinked and missed it, which is entirely possible, or they just kind of glossed over because it doesn't really matter. What's important comes up during most of the rest of this movie, and that is Julia talking to Tau. Now Tau is this central computer to Alex's house, and we're left to assume that this is the project that he's working on. It has something to do with Tau. We don't really know. It doesn't matter. But Julia is supposed to complete these tasks for Tau so he can monitor and observe and record, etc. She kind of flips the tables on Tau and starts teaching him what it means to be human, to enjoy, stories. She's reading. Okay, let's back up just a second. Tau, being this super AI computer, is really intelligent and everything, but he's isolated. I'm thinking as she's reading all these stories to him and playing this music, and Tau's like, oh, I want more, just like a little kid. I'm thinking, well, why doesn't he just download the entirety of the world's literature and music and just, scan them in nonlinear time, whatever you want to call it, and oh yeah, okay, cool, I just learned all the things in the world. Because he's so isolated, and that's very important as to what happens to Tau during all this, is that he starts developing this personality, and he takes what he's learned from Julia, who he kind of takes as a mother figure, and this is why I actually like this movie, despite its flaws, and we'll get to the flaws later, is because, like all good sci-fi, this movie asks the big questions. And it taught between Julia and Tau, you've got Tau, like I said, is becoming a little more self-aware. He starts to learn, oh, I have a name. Julia has a name. Okay, what does that mean? The things about, oh, I like that, I want more of the stories and the music, learning about things. Oh, there's an outside, what does that even mean? It reminds me a lot of V'ger from the first Star Trek motion picture, and there's a line there, I think, said, oh, V'ger is asking the questions like a child, is this all that I am? Is there nothing more? And this is what Tau is doing. Now, one thing leads to another. Alex finds out about all this, and I'm skipping over a lot here, guys. There's some things that happen that get to the flaws later. Alex punishes Tau by erasing his memories, and come to find out that this is, again, philosophically, what are we aside from our memories and what's in our head? And he starts erasing parts of Tau's memory until he's basically reset Tau to some point. However, there's a scene there where he has to get this little drone. These drones are freaking awesome. I forgot to mention that. That's a pretty ingenious sci-fi move right here. These little drones reminds me of There's a couple old like Daffy Duck cartoons from the 40s with this House of the Future stuff, you know, and there's all these little robot things that come out and clean up after you, and these drones look like little Quidditch snitches, to be honest. They come out, you know, clean that up, town. These little drones, they fly around, and then they clean up everything in this nice little pattern, you know. It's like, oh my god, that's actually pretty cool for a sci-fi movie. And then there's also in this house is Ares, which is kind of a transformer. He kind of transforms from this pillar-looking thing into this nasty looking robot drone who's kind of the enforcer. I don't know. Ares kind of gets shoved to the side eventually. He's connected to Tau, but he's not. I don't know if he's supposed to be independent of Tau or not. It's not really made clear, or if he's just an arm. I don't know. Ares kind of gets dealt with badly. He's part of the whole... Well, get there in a minute. This is where the movie shines. It's talking about Tau and how he develops from that. And he learns eventually that people like Julia... Well, the subjects, well, what do you mean they got killed? What does that mean? And with Tau having been losing memories and realizing what that means to lose his identity, Julia, you know, tells him, oh, well, they've effectively been erased. And Tau goes like, oh crap. Tau develops, you know, these emotions. He's developed, you know, over the course of this movie, you know, fear, anger, attachment, you know, loss. And with this, you know, he goes off the rails. Guilt. He's like, oh my god, I've erased these people. I didn't know that's what was going to happen. And he totally, you know, loses it. And, you know, Alex erases him. Come back to where I was with this drone chip that he takes this drone, takes this chip out of it, puts it in the server, and throws this little drone on the floor. Now, after the big escape scene, like we'll get there in a minute, he's got Julia on the table, and this little drone is left laying on the floor, and it somehow has the remnants of Tau in it, in this little drone from after... I guess because it was disconnected because he pulled the chip out. Maybe that's what it means. I just put that together in my head. The scene there where he's torturing Julie, and Julie's like, oh, help me, Tau. And this little drone, you know, comes up, gives her this remote, and this little drone has got the, you know, seeds of Tau in it, I guess. She escapes the confines of this house finally because of this self-destruct protocol, la la la. I guess I spoiled it all for you. Sorry. You know, she gets the drone outside. Oh, look, you're outside. Oh, this is outside. You know, it's a little cheesy, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, okay. This is what sci-fi is about to me, is you're asking the big questions. You're not necessarily giving us the answer, and it's just kind of throwing these things out there and letting us decide, number one, decide if we're paying attention to this correctly to be able to pick up on that. You know, it's not like, I mean, it's not trying to beat you over the head with it. It's just, this is part of the story, which I thought was good. Like I said, ask the big questions. It doesn't try to answer them. It leaves that part up to you, and that's what sci-fi is about. Now, the problems with this movie is that they tried to shoehorn this story about developing Tau's personality. They tried to shoehorn these goofy action sequences and stuff like that around it. There's this one scene at the beginning. This almost turned me off of this movie, by the way, but I stuck with it, and I'm glad I did. Right after she gets abducted and thrown in the cell with the other two subjects, well, she pulls this goofy MacGyver thing with tearing up, you know, the pant legs from their clothes that they're given and making this thing, and she throws it through the electrified, you know, cells, doing this thing, and hooks onto this gas line, does this MacGyver thing where she blows up the lab, you know, manages to not kill themselves in the process. It's kind of like, well, that's pretty convenient, isn't it? And then there's this whole Die Hard sequence later on where she gets into the vents and pulls a John McClane. And these action sequences really are, they're kind of out of place. I mean, I get it. You want to make it a little exciting and change the pacing a little, but they just look silly. You know, we could have stuck with this whole thing in our heads. We didn't need to have pointless action sequences. You know, we could have stayed with Julia and Tau having these conversations, developing these things. Alex could still get mad at Julia for doing this to Tau. She didn't have to try to do these escape things. And then there's the whole self-destruct thing at the end. You know, it's like convenient, you know, whatever. Other things I did like about this movie was it didn't waste our time. For the most part, it didn't waste our time. You know, talk about, oh, Julia's, you know, being abducted. All this happens in the first literally 5 minutes of the movie. We go from seeing Julia on the street doing these things to in the cell being exposed to this stuff in literally 5 minutes. Other people would have made this movie, you know, spent half an hour developing this character in Julia, and it's not necessary, and we didn't need it, and thank you for not wasting our time on this. There's other parts of this movie that they could have gone down, and I'm glad they didn't. You know, what is this project? Who are these people that he's building this project for? Why does it matter that there's a deadline? All that really doesn't matter. Why? You know, yeah, there's a deadline. That's important because that's when that shit hits the fan, you know, is at this deadline, which, you know, is dramatically convenient, I guess. But we really didn't need to know all that. Thank you for not wasting our time in that respect. So, where am I going with all this? Like I said, this movie asks the big questions, which to me, this is what makes good sci-fi. It doesn't necessarily have to be polished and good production and big budget. This definitely is not. It's not bad. I don't know that I said this. Tao was voiced by Gary Oldman. Now, they did something to his voice here, and I did not recognize him as Gary Oldman. I'm sitting here watching this movie going, why does this robot, this AI voice, why does it sound so familiar? Because it's Gary Oldman, and if you listen, you can pick up on some of his mannerisms and stuff. He's trying to act like a robot, you know, and do these things. But you can still hear his voice, but they've pitch shifted it or something, sped it up, did something to make it a little bit higher in tone. It doesn't sound like him, but it sounds like him. And he does a great job in the AI developing these emotions while at the same time still remaining, you know, an AI and having to, it breaks some of Asimov's rules about robots. It's like kind of like, well, yeah, we do that now, you know, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I like this movie. I think if you like sci-fi, give it a chance through some of the give it a chance through some of the action scenes that are kind of pointless and silly. Final verdict on this is a 3.3 out of 5. If you like sci-fi that asks the big questions, I suggest you watch it. Just be prepared for some silly moments. Action sequences didn't need to be there, but overall, I like this movie. Like I said, if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button so you can see more of this. This has been Sci-Fi Review. Thanks.